make some sense of it all, but I can see it makes no sense at all. Is it cool to go to sleep on the floor? 'Cause I don't think that I can take anymore. Clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right. Here I am, stuck in the middle with you.
Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. Today's Sunday, June 29th, 2025, and the digital service tax is big news over the weekend. Trump is not happy, and now people are starting to weigh in, including Doug Ford, about all of this stuff, and we'll be starting there. And one of the funny things about the digital service tax is it targets revenue, not profit. So everything that you make, it doesn't matter how much your delivery costs, it doesn't matter how much your overhead is. It doesn't matter anything like that. They want the whole kit and caboodle, everything, revenue, 3% of revenue, not profit. Wow, just unbelievable. And it's egregious, and I'm embarrassed that Canada's trying this nonsense. Doug Ford is considering a run for CPC leadership. Mark Carney is selling Canada out on the world stage to Europe while pivoting away from the United States, and it seems like he's trying to burn down our relationship with the United States, and that's not good. Like, that's not good for Canadians' rank and file. It's not good for jobs. It's not good for customers. So if you are a Canadian business selling into the United States and all of this uncertainty keeps happening because our government keeps behaving in boneheaded ways, then maybe your customers who your business depends on, maybe they find a different supplier, right? Maybe they find somebody else who can give them whatever widget you supply and then cut out all that uncertainty because it's just in the United States naturally, right? So it's not great what's happening, and Mark Carney doesn't seem to care. In fact, that seems to be playing right into his hand. New EU apparatus to loan defense money to countries that can't afford it, countries like us, like Canada, and that creates a debt trap, right? Oh, you can't afford it, don't worry, we'll loan it to you, but in exchange for the loan, you have to give us some ownership or something like that of Canada. Just a little bit of ownership. The United States has done this for free for a long time. Time to elbows up and pivot away. It's very, very unfortunate that Mark Carney's in charge at this point in time. And we'll look at Ursula von der Leyen announcing this debt trap and this loan apparatus early in the show today. And Trump, at the end of the show, is fighting for Bibi Netanyahu. Netanyahu is facing court and all sorts of stuff. People in Israel don't seem to like Bibi very much. Before the whole Israel-Gaza thing happened, Bibi was on the ropes and people wanted him removed as the president. And then the war happened and October 7th happened. And then people said, okay, he's a wartime president. And now Trump's going to bat for Bibi. And so I don't find that great. It's just one of those things that happened, and I thought I'd tell you about it. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, we've got to start with trade and Doug Ford. And Doug Ford really kind of outlining what's going on here and saying, we've got to stop our federal government from being idiots. Holy smoke. So here's Doug Ford. And Concerned Canadian says, finally something I agree with Ford on. And yeah, it's rare because Doug Ford is hit or miss, more miss. So here's a rare hit. Here we go.
We need the federal government to pause the implementation of the digital services tax. The DST is a bipartisan consensus in Washington. They are absolutely furious at us. I talk to Democrats, I talk to Republicans, and they are furious. They're furious with Canada over even considering what they view as an unfair tax on American companies. Putting aside the fact that they'll never support bringing in a new tax, no matter what it is, we cannot put millions of Canadian jobs in our historic economic partnership with the US at risk because of a stubborn refusal to listen to the concerns of our American friends. The federal government needs to pause the implementation of the digital services tax. We need the federal government.
So we'll see if that happens. Doubtful. I'm not holding my breath. And apparently during this G7, this was brought to Mark Carney's attention. Like, hey, dude, you can't bring this tax in. It's not going to work. Melissa says Canada was asked at the G7 to delay the digital service tax for 30 days. Canada did not delay, and therefore Trump was forced to end all trade conversations with Canada. Canada messed up. And Canadians will suffer, she says. And I'll show you the clip. Just give me a second. Brian Lilly is adding a little bit more color to this. He says, Canada was asked to delay the DST, the digital service tax, for 30 days. We said no. It takes effect Monday, tomorrow, and is a retroactive payment of up to $3 billion is due on Monday. The bill that brought in the DST was only passed last June 2024, but the companies are being told to pay it going back to 2022. So, whoops, right? That's not great. Here is a reporter asking Mark Carney, what's your response to Trump's ending trade negotiations with Canada? And Mark Carney's response is, it's a negotiation. Don't even worry about it. It's a negotiation. Here you go. Oh, that seems too loud. Sorry about that, everyone. Turn it down.
You spoken to the president today yet, sir?
No, I didn't speak to the president today.
What do you? Any reaction to the news that you put out on Truth Social today?
We'll continue to conduct these complex negotiations in the best interest of Canadians. It's a negotiation. Ça va continuer.
Will you back down from the DST? Can you just say that in French?
Je viens de...
Yeah. Carney said something in French, and the reporter was asking a follow-up, will you back down on the DST, which is what I wanted to have an answer on. And then he said, did you just say that in French? And then Mark Carney goes off and says it in French. Okay, but still not much of a reaction, and it seems like discounting all of this, it's going to plan, which is to pivot Canada away from the United States and to be able to blame it on Trump. Regardless of the truth, it doesn't really matter. Paul says, Michael Geist tells the Wall Street Journal it's shocking how Canadian officials under former Prime Minister Trudeau and current Prime Minister Carney dismiss the risk of irking the United States and face severe retaliation with a digital service tax on Wall Street. Wall Street Journal writes, one of the fiercest critics in Canada of the Liberal government's implementation of a digital services tax says President Trump's promise to terminate U.S.-Canada tariff talks should come as no surprise. The digital tax was always high risk for Canada. Michael Geist, law professor at the University of Ottawa and internet law expert, tells Wall Street Journal. He says it's shocking how Canadian officials had dismissed the risk of irking the United States and faced severe retaliation, as had been warned by congressional leaders and officials in both Trump and Biden administration. The real possibility of economic harm will far outweigh the benefit of a digital tax. The Canadian cabinet formally implemented a tax on July 3rd of last year. So there you go. We are going to be not rewarded, consequenced for our stupidity. Here is apparently the Americans have noticed, and they're starting a boycott. And realistically, our cheese and dairy is a very minor export, but he's talking grocery stores. And I didn't know that we exported so much cheese and dairy, considering I don't know any American cheese or dairy brands offhand, as far as I know anyway, right? Nielsen's not American, is it? Here's this guy.
That game. Here's a list of Canadian products that are being sold in the United States that from this point on I will never purchase again. AgroPerv, which offers a variety of cheeses and dairy products. Black Diamond, known for their cheese offerings. Daya, specializing in dairy-free alternatives. Lactantia, which offers butter and other dairy products. And the all-famous Cheese Whiz, which I don't know who in the world still eats that. Or what about their frozen desserts like ice cream or Chapman's ice cream? Or their baked goods and snacks like Vortman cookies or wafers? And let's not forget their famous David's tea. Or even their plant-based products like Earth's Own. And I don't know who in the world has eaten these or will ever try to eat these. Don't forget their midday squares that they are still trying to sell here in the US. I mean, for being a polite and a friend or an ally to the United States, you guys are taking some very drastic measures. Simply because your friend, the United States, is asking for a piece of
the pie, or just not to have a digital service tax unilaterally implemented on Monday with retroactive to 2022. Seems pretty wild. Why would you do that? Why would you poke your best friend in the eye like that? Oh, because you've got the EU waiting to take you away in the car, right? The EU is sitting in the car watching you poke your good friend, the United States, in the eye. Here's the National Post. Carney seems intent on moving Canada at full throttle towards Europe at the expense of our relationship with the United States. Yep. Mark Nixon says Mark Carney wants to replace our number one trade partner, 76% of exports, with Europe. Brilliant. Let's ship lumber, oil, and beef across the Atlantic, because nothing screams climate leadership like 10 times more emissions to trade with a collapsing economy on the other side of the world. Yep, that's about it. Mark Nixon says, back in April, Mark Carney said he doesn't want high carbon steel to come to Canada. Since that announcement, we found out BC Ferries is purchasing ferries from China and using Chinese steel. And the Patulo Bridge replacement is using Chinese steel. So much for all of those lies that were obvious lies during the campaign, right? I mean, I was calling it out the whole time because he lied every day during his campaign and he didn't have a day without a scandal and yet easily won the prime ministership and the whole kit and caboodle, right? In exactly the same configuration as last time, just without Jagmeet Singh. Weird. Concerned Canadian again says the answer to why he didn't support Pierre Poilievre, Doug Ford won't rule out running to lead the federal Conservatives, which, yeah, I'm not surprised. How many Conservative premiers are interested in becoming the Conservative leader or former premiers? Jason Kenney's going to be in that leadership race. Doug Ford will be in that leadership race. Outside chance, Danielle Smith will be in that leadership race. So it's already a crowded field. And I'm not surprised by any of this at all. Doug Ford really likes to play nice with the Liberals. And by Liberals, I mean the Globalist Party. So he can partake, I think, maybe. Wiretap Media is showing Ursula von der Leyen talking about how she's announcing the creation of SAFE, which is a Federal Reserve-style banking system that will provide loans to countries like Canada that can't meet NATO's spending targets. Darn. So we can't build pipelines to make ourselves self-sufficient for our East Coast and things like that. And we can't build pipelines to sell LNG to foreign countries like Germany, et cetera, that have come here asking to buy our LNG. We can't do any of that, but we could take a loan out. Listen, sorry, man, all I could do for you is a loan. All I could do for you is give you a loan. That's it. Okay, thanks, EU. I guess we'll take that loan for a couple of $100 billion and I'm sure it'll all come out in the wash. And people are talking about how this could lead to a draft in Canada for the EU in order to fight against Russia, I guess. Here is Ursula von der Leyen.
But in recent months, Europe has taken action. Action that seemed unthinkable just a year ago. We set up the Rearm Europe plan to mobilize indeed 650 billion euros in defense investment over the next 4 years. And in addition, in just 4 months, we created a new financial instrument, we call it SAFE, with 150 billion euros in loans for joint procurement. So overall, as you said, Readiness 2030, 800 billion euros over the next 4 years to be invested in defense. Last week, I think also important, we proposed a simplification omnibus to radically simplify and thus speed up our defense investment. And we signed by now across the world, the latest of them actually yesterday with Canada. The Europe of defense has finally awakened. Tomorrow the summit will set indeed historic new spending targets for NATO allies, and the European Union has an important role to play here. While NATO sets the standards and the capability targets for allies, our union can help connect the dots between different industries, between civilian and military, and between NATO and non-NATO countries.
Like Ukraine. So, yeah, all of this to have a military that is paid for by us, it seems. And I think it has to do also with the Ponzi scheme of needing a continual infusion of people to make sure that our economy doesn't completely collapse, because the Ponzi scheme, if it doesn't expand, if that continual growth is interrupted, then it all collapses. And so this is a pivot to make sure that we can keep funneling people, because Europe has open borders. So once you're, quote, European, you can just come on over to Canada, right? So I don't know. I am very skeptical about all what they're doing. The people down here, Wiretap Media says the EU could easily enforce a draft under the guise of Canadian law using this kind of framework. And so I'm very skeptical. I'm skeptical that this is a good direction for Canada to go. Rupa is let's talk about free speech. And she is she's highlighting that in Mark Carney's and the EU's communique, there were some lines buried. And recently in Germany, Peter St. Ong says Germany's running almost 1,000 home raids a month for online posts criticizing politicians. One man was arrested for calling an official dumb. So, wow, I can't wait till we align with the EU more. Rupa says, strange that no Canadian media caught this. Buried in the Canada-EU joint statement was a pledge to, quote, align regulatory frameworks and, quote, make online platforms safer and more inclusive. So, as Mark Carney pivots to Europe, will Germany bureaucrats end up policing speech here? Read and subscribe to my latest newsletter. They're already policing speech here. They already censor. I don't know why or how I got my YouTube channel back. It seems like a trap, but we'll see how it goes, I guess. But yeah, it's a very, very interesting situation where people are being arrested, but we have a guarantee of freedom of expression in our Charter of Rights. And you can say mean things. You can say, I don't believe in that. And that's not illegal. And you can say, here are the reasons why I don't believe in that. And that's not illegal either. And so until they change things to explicitly terminate free speech in Canada, they're going to have a hard time. All of that said, they're moving to terminate free speech in Canada. Absolutely. And they're going to use any tool they can to hasten that. And we're watching it happen in real time, right? Germany used to be a place where you could speak your mind. The United Kingdom used to be a place where you can speak your mind, and that's not so anymore. So that's concerning, right? Resist CBDC says Germany is knocking down 1,000 doors a month to arrest people for online posts because of the Digital Services Act that allows state censorship under the guise of fighting hate speech, disinformation, and misinformation. And so they are trying to bring that justification here. And I've brought you a whole bunch of examples of the inverted justification they use just so you could be aware of it. A lot of it is branding. A lot of it is psychological warfare. If you are against diversity, right? If you say, listen, this multicultural thing is bad. This is a position of the People's Party of Canada, by the way. We should repeal the multicultural laws in Canada and take care of our own people, basically. The people who are living in Canada currently, not all of the people abroad who could one day be Canadian. But it's all branding, and it's difficult to argue that in a political landscape like Canada. And this person is talking, this is about education, but this is talking about how the left use marketing, branding to checkmate their opponents into being against the good thing, right? It's all because good's been inverted and branding has been used to label something good when it's actually bad. And then people don't read past the headline, so they defend the bad thing because it's got a good headline. And you say, no, we don't want the anti-discrimination bill. And people are saying, why? You want to discriminate against people? And you say, no, the anti-discrimination bill itself is discriminatory. And they say, okay, crazy town. And you're like, oh my gosh, why? Why don't you read past the headline? So that's what happens, right? So here is somebody explaining how the left keeps winning and we keep bashing our head against the wall, trying to explain to people that they're supporting the bad guys. Here we go.
Left is good at one thing. It's psychology and branding. They've really studied human psychology, and they are master manipulators.
Absolutely.
Propagandists in every way possible. Even when they're putting in these grooming laws, they title it Anti-Discrimination Bill. So in the midst of us fighting for our children's lives, they were pushing these bills in New Jersey and passing it through the Senate and the Assembly because it's very difficult for a legislator to explain to their constituents, especially if they're a minority, to tell them why they voted no on an anti-discrimination bill that has that in the title. But when you read it, there's nothing about equality and true equality and anti-discrimination. It's all about how we're going to allow librarians and school staff to bring in this pornographic material to underage children.
Yep. So it's not just happening in Canada. It's not just happening in my city. It's happening everywhere. And isn't that wild? Isn't that something to notice, right? Here is Basil the Great, and he says, Met police say they will not prosecute Kneecap, whoever that is. I guess he was some guy at Glaston who started screaming about pro-Palestine or something like that. I don't know. And he got the crowd screaming about it. So he incites a crowd to scream violent rhetoric, and he's fine. The police aren't going to investigate him. Two-tier justice, says Basil, for the whole country to see. Lucy Connolly got 31 months in prison for a single tweet. I don't have any faith in the justice system anymore. Do you? No. But she listened to her lawyer and pled guilty. And no, I'm not going to be pleading guilty. You're going to have to prove that I was maliciously being mean and evil and not just reporting facts. You're going to have to, I'm not going to lay down and allow you to slaughter me. That's not going to happen. So regardless of what the lawyer says, I don't think the lawyers work for us either. Nenshi this is our grab bag of governance. Where are we? What time? Oh, 20 minutes. We got time. Nenshi is weighing in. Yesterday, I reported that a court in Alberta, I can't remember which one, the King's Bench of Alberta, issued an injunction against Danielle Smith's Bill 26, the bill protecting minors from any kind of mutilation and things like that. And Nenshi is saying that he is supporting the court stripping that protection away from minors and allowing gender ideologists to convince people to take hormones and have surgeries in order to, well, he says, I'm pleased to hear the news that the Court of King's Bench Alberta has ruled to block Danielle Smith and her United Conservative government's attempt to restrict the freedom of parents, medical professionals, and children under Bill 26. Read my full statement below. So you're not restricting the freedoms of parents. You're maintaining sanity in medicine. Like if you had the island of Dr. Moreau operating on children, would you shut that down? Would you then say, if a rogue judge stopped that shutting down with an injunction, would you say, we're letting the animals and the children explore their medical freedom? It's insane. It's insane, right? Like, you can't do that. You can't also allow somebody to pursue, listen, I want to be that 6-armed Spider-Man guy. Can you sew on 4 more arms and make sure they look like they're working? But I don't want to see the strings, right? Like, I want to be able to punch people, each independent. All of the sets of arms should be able to punch people independently. And if they promise you that and can't deliver that, which they would promise you that, and they wouldn't be able to deliver that. They would promise you that because it would create a patient for life, and they wouldn't be able to deliver because, well, you would have arms sewn onto your sides that don't work. That's irresponsible. That's insane. You can't allow people to sell things using irreversible operations that don't exist. You can't sell an iPhone, and then when you open up the iPhone at home, it's actually just a rock, right? Like, if somebody sold an iPhone and the iPhone didn't work, you could get your money back. But if somebody said, listen, we're going to turn you into a, whatever it is, and then they cut off your bits, and all of a sudden you're not a whatever it is, you're just who you were with your bits cut off, they should be held accountable. We're not kumbaya protecting anybody. This is an insane take from an insane person. What? Like, it doesn't make any sense. This is not protecting children. This is not protecting medical professionals. I hope Danielle Smith uses the notwithstanding clause and then impeaches the judge, but we'll see. We'll see. It doesn't seem like Danielle Smith really. Sometimes she does great, and other times you gotta wonder, what's your game, Danielle Smith? Bill is responding to the Canada Post, or the National Post, reporting Canada's plan to buy American-made F-35s is now expected to cost $27.7 billion, nearly 50% more than the original estimate in 2022, plus another $5.5 billion to achieve full operational capacity. In case you missed that, so. Super good. How many planes do we get? I don't even know how many planes that we were buying here, but does it get us over 100? Are there more than 25 F-35s? And if we have, I think we had 77 planes. So 77 planes plus 25 F-35s. Do we actually have an Air Force now? Or are the 77 other planes, like, does that constitute Air Kings or Sea King helicopters and other outdated aircraft as well? Like, do those planes count, or are they too old to count? I don't know. So it's very interesting. I feel like this is money laundering. I feel like if you worked for a company and they said in 2022, you need to get us a bunch of F-35s, and by 2025, the contract doubled plus $5.5 billion to achieve full operational capacity, somebody'd get fired. Like, I might be, if that was my responsibility, maybe I get fired, right? Whose responsibility was this? How did you mess it up so badly? Like, what? Oh my gosh. So that's just par for the course for Canadian politics these days, unfortunately. Rob says, we're going to get to the end of culture here, I think, and then we're going to kill the stream. Rob says, let's get it done. Danielle Smith, the numbers are a no-brainer. No one that can add can deny that all Albertans would benefit and be better off paying less tax. So here is Danielle Smith advocating for an Alberta pension plan and talking about $140 billion seed that they would get from the current Canadian pension plan. The beginning of the video, it's a 5-minute video. The beginning of the video highlights the waste and the bureaucracy in the Canadian pension plan, the fact that Alberta contributes $3 billion more and doesn't get $3 billion more than it gets out of the pension plan, and therefore Albertans are paying more than they should and getting the shaft, really. And so what are the benefits of this deal? Having an Alberta pension plan, here are the benefits according to Danielle Smith's video here.
A big upfront payout. Alberta would get back a significant lump sum by exiting the CPP. The chief actuary in Ottawa has indicated our share would be at least $140 billion. That's plenty to start and build a strong Alberta pension plan from day one. 2, better benefits for seniors, lower premiums for Alberta workers. Thanks to our younger, more productive population, an Alberta pension plan could result in Alberta workers paying lower pension premiums on their paychecks, or seniors enjoying higher pension benefits, or a mix of both. 3, local control and boosting our economy. An Alberta pension plan would be managed right here at home, creating more jobs and growing Alberta's financial sector. We would also be insulated from the economic and demographic decline in Canada. Our investment decisions could also be steered clear of ideological decision-making and instead remain focused on the long-term rate of return for Alberta pensioners. But there are some risks to consider. 1, uncertain payout. The CPP exit rules aren't clear in the federal legislation, and Ottawa is notoriously anti-Alberta with its decisions. So the size of the lump sum Alberta is offered could be lower than it should be. This could result in a lengthy court battle with the federal government, and it could lower our ability to increase benefit payments for seniors or lower premiums for workers. 2, long-term risk. As with any pension plan, if the plan is mismanaged or Alberta's economy and demographics fall behind Canada, premiums would have to rise in the future in order to guarantee our seniors the same benefits they enjoy today under the CPP.
Earlier in the video, they talk about how Quebec had transitioned to their own pension plan decades ago, and it's been great, basically. And so I think that while there are risks, it's the same as anything. There's a risk to leaving your house. You know what I mean? You get on the highway and there's a risk. You get on any roadway, there's a risk. You cross the street to catch a bus, there's a risk. So I think that's probably worth the risk in this case. But I'm not in Alberta. I wish